She pressed the phone against her ear like a lifeline, her voice barely above a whisper in the empty restaurant corridor. The Vampire King wasn't supposed to be there. Wasn't supposed to hear her say those words that would crack open both their carefully constructed worlds. But he was. And he did. And at 3 a.m, he'd do something that would change everything. The crystal chandeliers had dimmed to a soft glow, casting shadows that moved like silk across the marble floors. Maya's fingers trembled as she balanced the last tray of the night, her reflection warping in the polished silver. 2 months working at the Crimson Court, the most exclusive vampire establishment in the city, and she still felt like an imposter among the velvet and gold. She could hear the final patrons departing through the main entrance, their laughter fading into the night like smoke. Her feet ached in shoes she'd bought secondhand, the soles worn so thin she could feel every crack in the floor. Just 1 more hour. 1 more hour and she could leave. Could figure out where she'd sleep tonight. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Maya glanced toward the kitchen, making sure the head server wasn't watching, then slipped into the service corridor. The narrow hallway smelled of old stone and expensive wine, lined with paintings of vampire lords from centuries past. Their painted eyes seemed to follow her as she answered the call. "Mom?" Her mother's voice crackled through the speaker, thin and tired. "Baby, I'm so sorry. The landlord came by again. He changed the locks. I tried to stop him, but your brother's medical bills, the rent we owe, I couldn't." Maya's back hit the cold wall. She slid down until she was sitting on the floor, her uniform skirt pooling around her knees. "It's okay, Mom. It's okay. I'll figure something out. Where are you now?" "At Linda's. She's letting us stay in her spare room. But Maya, she can only take your brother and me. She doesn't have space for." "I know." Maya cut her off gently, swallowing the thickness in her throat. "I understand. Don't worry about me. I'll find a place." She could hear her mother crying, the same helpless sound that had haunted her childhood. Ever since her father died, ever since her little brother Ezra got sick, that sound had become the soundtrack to their lives. "I'm so sorry," her mother whispered. "You work so hard, you send us everything, and we still can't. Stop." Maya forced brightness into her voice, the same way she forced smiles for demanding customers. "I'm fine. I'll sleep in my car tonight. It's actually nice out. I'll treat it like camping." The lie tasted bitter, but necessary. Her car didn't have working heat. November nights in the city dropped below freezing. But her mother didn't need to know that. "You sure, baby?" "I'm sure. Take care of Ezra. Give him a kiss for me." After she hung up, Maya sat in the corridor for a long moment, staring at the phone in her hands. The screen showed her bank balance, $43. She'd sent everything else home last week for Ezra's medication. $43 wouldn't get her a hotel room, wouldn't even get her a decent meal. But it would buy gas to keep the car running, maybe keep her from freezing completely. She didn't hear the footsteps, didn't sense the presence that had stopped at the corridor's entrance, didn't know that someone had heard every word. King Lucian Ashbourne had ruled the vampire court for 200 years. He'd fought wars, negotiated treaties, and survived betrayals that would have destroyed lesser immortals. He'd learned to move in perfect silence, to observe from shadows, to see everything while remaining unseen. Tonight, he'd forgotten a document in his private study. The restaurant below was built into the lower levels of his palace, a business venture his advisors had insisted would foster better human-vampire relations. He rarely visited it, but tonight, needing to retrieve the forgotten papers, he'd taken the service stairs. And heard a voice that made him stop, made him listen, made something in his chest, something he'd thought long dead, twist with recognition. The human waitress sat on the floor like a broken doll, her dark hair falling loose from its careful bun. She wore the standard uniform, black and white, and pressed to perfection, but he could see the careful mending along one sleeve. Could see how the fabric pulled too tight across her shoulders, as if it had been made for someone else. He'd noticed her before. Difficult not to. She moved through the restaurant like water, anticipating needs before they were voiced, handling difficult patrons with grace that seemed innate rather than learned. She smiled, but her eyes always held a certain sadness, like sunlight filtered through storm clouds. And she had a way with the younger vampires, the newly turned, who still struggled with their transition. He'd watched her calm a fledgling who'd been overwhelmed by the sensory changes, her voice low and steady, her hand gentle on their shoulder. She'd known exactly what to say, had somehow understood the particular terror of losing one's humanity. Now, he understood why. She knew what it meant to lose things, to sacrifice, to keep going when everything fell apart. "I'll sleep in my car tonight." The words echoed in his mind. He thought of his own daughter, Serafina. 8 years old, vampire by birth but fragile in ways that terrified him. She'd lost her mother 3 years ago to an illness that even vampire blood couldn't cure. Since then, she'd stopped speaking, not mute. The physicians assured him her voice worked perfectly. She simply chose silence, wrapping it around herself like armor. He'd hired the best tutors, the finest physicians, specialists from across the vampire world. They taught her, treated her, analyzed her. But none of them could reach her. None of them could bring back the bright, laughing child she'd been before her mother died. Serafina needed someone who understood loss, who knew how to survive it, who could show her that silence didn't have to mean surrender. The waitress, Maya he'd heard her mother call her, pushed herself up from the floor. She wiped her eyes quickly, efficiently, the way someone well-practiced in hiding tears. Then she straightened her uniform, tucked her hair back into place, and transformed. The sadness disappeared behind a professional mask. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. In 30 seconds, she looked perfectly composed, ready to serve, ready to smile, ready to pretend everything was fine. Lucian recognized that transformation. He wore his own mask every day. The weight of the crown, the burden of immortal responsibility, the desperate fear that he was failing his daughter, that every day of her silence was another day he'd lost her a little more. The waitress walked past him without seeing him. He'd pulled the shadows around himself instinctively, a vampire trick that bent light and attention. She was already planning. He could see it in her eyes, calculating how early she'd need to arrive tomorrow to wash up in the restaurant bathroom, where she could park her car to avoid police attention, how she'd survive another day of pretending. Lucian returned to his study. The documents could wait. He stood by the window, watching the city lights below, thinking about a woman who sent every penny home to a sick brother and an overwhelmed mother, who slept in her car rather than burden anyone, who smiled through her own breaking. And he thought about his daughter, who hadn't smiled in 3 years. At 3 a.m, he made a decision, called his head of household security, gave specific instructions. Then, he went to check on Serafina, found her sleeping fitfully, her small hand clutching a photograph of her mother. He touched her dark hair gently. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow, everything changes. Maya woke to someone knocking on her car window. She jerked upright, her neck screaming from the awkward angle she'd slept at, her breath fogging the glass. The temperature had dropped lower than she'd expected. Even with her coat and the thin blanket from her trunk, she'd barely slept, shivering through the hours until dawn. The knocking came again. Gentle, persistent. She wiped the condensation from the window and found herself looking at a man in an expensive suit, late 50s, silver hair, carrying himself with the particular stillness that marked older vampires. Behind him, the sky was still dark. Her phone showed 3:17 in the morning. "Miss Maya Thorne?" His voice was cultured, polite. She cracked the window an inch. "Yes, my name is Frederick. I'm the head of household for King Ashbourne. He's sent me to offer you alternative accommodations." Her heart dropped. Oh God. He'd heard. The Vampire King had heard her pathetic phone call, and now he was having her removed from the property. She'd parked in the restaurant's employee lot, technically palace grounds. "I'm so sorry," she started, already reaching for her keys. "I'll leave right now. I didn't mean to." "Please," Frederick interrupted smoothly. "You misunderstand. His Majesty would like to offer you the use of one of the staff suites, private quarters, fully furnished, with a proper bed and heating. No cost." He paused. "He was quite insistent that I find you immediately." Maya stared at him. "A staff suite? But I'm just a waitress. I work in the restaurant downstairs. I'm not palace staff." Frederick's expression softened slightly. "His Majesty was very specific. He believes you may be of service to the household in ways beyond your current position. He would like to discuss a proposal with you in the morning. In the meantime, he insists you accept proper shelter. The heating in your vehicle appears insufficient for the season." It was the gentle understatement of the year. Maya couldn't feel her toes, couldn't stop shaking. And this stranger, this vampire who served the king, was offering her a warm bed? Why? She had to ask it. Why would the king care where I sleep? Frederick studied her for a moment. Then, very quietly, he said, "His Majesty lost his wife 3 years ago. He understands what it means to care for family alone, to sacrifice everything, to hide pain behind a smile. He believes you might understand something similar." Her throat tightened. She thought about the phone call, about what the king might have heard, about a vampire lord, immortal and powerful, who somehow recognized her particular brand of breaking. "I accept," she whispered. "Thank you." The staff suite was more beautiful than anywhere Maya had ever lived. Cream-colored walls, dark wood furniture, a bed so large and soft she almost cried when Frederick showed her in, a private bathroom with heated floors, a small kitchenette, windows that overlooked the palace gardens, currently silver with frost. "There are fresh linens," Frederick said, gesturing to the closet. "The kitchen is stocked with basics. If you need anything, there's an intercom by the door. His Majesty asks that you meet him in the East Garden at 9 tomorrow morning. He'll explain the position he'd like to offer you." Maya nodded, still overwhelmed. "Thank you, Frederick." He paused at the door. "Miss Thorne, if I may? His Majesty is not a man who offers help lightly. Whatever he saw in you tonight, it was significant. I've served him for 60 years. I've never seen him intervene personally for a restaurant employee." She didn't know what to say to that. Frederick left her alone in luxury she didn't deserve, and warmth she'd stopped believing existed. Maya took a hot shower that lasted until her skin turned pink, put on the clean clothes from her car, the best she had, trying to make herself presentable for whatever morning would bring. Then she lay down in the enormous bed, pulled the thick comforter around herself, and finally, slept without shivering. She dreamed of her brother Ezra, smiling and healthy, dreamed of her mother without the worry lines carved into her face, dreamed of a little girl with dark hair who sat in silence, surrounded by people who didn't know how to reach her. The East Garden looked like something from a fairy tale. Even in late November, it bloomed with night-flowering plants that thrived in vampire territory. Moonflowers climbed silver trellises, white roses gathered in careful clusters. A fountain carved from black marble whispered in the center, water flowing like liquid crystal. Maya arrived at precisely 9, wearing her waitress uniform because it was the most professional thing she owned. Her hands twisted together nervously as she waited, standing beside the fountain, trying not to touch anything expensive. He appeared without sound, the way vampires did. One moment the garden was empty, except for her. The next, King Lucian Ashbourne stood 3 feet away, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. She'd seen him before, of course. He visited the restaurant occasionally, always at a corner table, always alone. But she'd never been this close, never had his full attention focused on her like weight and shadow. He was tall, with dark hair that held threads of silver at the temples. His face was carved in elegant lines, beautiful the way vampire faces often were. But there was something else. A tiredness around his eyes, a tightness to his mouth that spoke of burdens carried too long. He wore simple clothes, black shirt and dark pants. No crown, no obvious markers of royalty. But he didn't need them. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame. "Miss Thorne," he said. His voice was deep, controlled. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you. The suite is too generous. I don't." He held up a hand, stopping her. "Please, sit." There was a bench near the fountain. Maya sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. The king sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the temperature difference. Vampires ran cold. She could see her own breath in the morning air, but his never fogged. "I apologize for the intrusion last night," he began. "I overheard your phone conversation. It was not intentional, but I cannot unhear what I heard." Maya's cheeks burned. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to bring personal problems to your property. I'll make sure it doesn't." He cut her off again. "You misunderstand. I'm not concerned about your presence on palace grounds. I'm concerned about your circumstances." His dark eyes met hers, and she saw something unexpected there. Genuine worry. "You told your mother you'd sleep in your car, that you'd treat it like camping." The lie was kind, but unnecessary. Not with me. The gentleness in his voice nearly undid her. Maya bit the inside of her cheek, fighting tears. "I didn't have anywhere else to go," she admitted quietly. "My brother, he's sick. The medical bills. We lost our apartment. I send everything home to help, but it's never enough. It's never." She stopped, horrified that she was confessing all of this to the Vampire King. But Lucian only nodded, as if he understood, as if he'd carried similar weight. "How old is your brother?" 15. He was born with a heart condition. He's had 3 surgeries already. The medication he needs costs. She named the figure. It was astronomical. The king didn't flinch. "And you're what, 23? Supporting your family alone?" 24. Maya straightened her shoulders. "I don't mind. They're my family. I'd do anything for them." Something shifted in the king's expression, a softening around his eyes. He looked away, toward the fountain, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I have a daughter, Serafina. She's 8. She lost her mother 3 years ago to an illness we couldn't cure. Since then, she hasn't spoken a single word." Maya's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry." Lucian continued as if she hadn't spoken. "I've hired specialists from around the world, tutors, physicians, therapists. They teach her, they care for her physical health. But none of them can reach her. None of them understand what it is to lose something irreplaceable and keep living anyway." He turned back to Maya. "Last night, I heard you comfort your mother, heard you turn your own fear into reassurance, watched you transform your pain into strength in a matter of seconds." He paused. "My daughter needs someone who understands that transformation, someone who knows how to survive loss without surrendering to it." Maya's throat was tight. She thought about Ezra, about the nights she'd held him after surgeries, the way she'd learned to smile through terror. You want me to help your daughter. Not as a tutor, Lucian clarified. Not as a physician or therapist. I want you to spend time with her. Simply be present. Show her what you showed me last night. That it's possible to carry grief and still move forward. That silence doesn't have to be permanent. Maya's mind was racing. Your Majesty, I'm not qualified. I don't have training in child psychology or trauma or... You have something better. He looked at her directly. You have experience. You've survived what she's surviving. That's worth more than any degree. He outlined the proposal. Maya would move into the staff suite permanently, would work mornings with Serafina, simply spending time with her, reading, playing, teaching her whatever Maya knew. The rest of her days would be her own. In exchange, she'd receive a salary that made her head spin, enough to cover Ezra's medical bills, to help her mother, to save something for herself. And if it doesn't work? Maya asked. If I can't help her? Then you've lost nothing, and I've gained the knowledge that I tried everything possible. But the king's eyes held something else. A desperate hope he was trying to hide. I think you'll surprise both of us. Maya thought about her car. About $43. About her mother crying on the phone. About a little girl who'd chosen silence because words had failed her. She thought about Ezra, who faced every surgery with courage he shouldn't have to possess at 15. When do I start? Tomorrow, Lucian said. And for the first time since entering the garden, he almost smiled. Serafina's room was painted in shades of twilight. Deep purple walls faded to pale lavender near the ceiling, where someone had painted stars in silver leaf. Bookshelves lined every wall, filled with volumes that ranged from picture books to what looked like university-level texts. A window seat overlooked the same gardens Maya had walked through that morning, cushioned in velvet the color of midnight. And in the center of the room, sitting at a small desk with papers scattered around her, was the quietest child Maya had ever seen. She was small for 8, delicate-boned like her father, with the same dark hair falling past her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, deep green, and her feet were bare, despite the cold. When Maya entered with Lucian, Serafina didn't look up. Her hand moved across the paper in front of her, drawing something with intense concentration. Serafina, Lucian said softly. This is Miss Maya. She's going to be spending time with you each morning. The girl's hand paused, just for a heartbeat, then continued drawing. Lucian's expression didn't change, but Maya saw his shoulders tighten almost imperceptibly. He'd hoped for more reaction, had probably always hoped for more. I'll leave you both to get acquainted, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Miss Maya, if you need anything, the intercom. I know, Maya said gently. Thank you, Your Majesty. When the door closed behind him, Maya stood there for a moment, studying the child, who wouldn't meet her eyes. She recognized that protective isolation, had worn it herself after her father died. The way you made yourself small and silent, hoping that if you didn't ask for anything, didn't need anything, you couldn't be disappointed again. Mind if I sit? Maya asked. Serafina didn't respond. Maya took that as permission. She pulled a chair from the corner and sat near the desk, but not too close. Close enough to see what Serafina was drawing. It was a garden, intricate and detailed, with flowers that looked like they were growing right off the page. In the center stood a woman in a flowing dress, her face turned toward the sky. Your mom? Maya asked quietly. Serafina's pencil stopped. Her small body went very still. Then, slowly, she nodded. Once. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. She's beautiful. You captured her really well. The way her dress moves, she looks like she's dancing. Another nod. Smaller this time. My dad died when I was 9, Maya said. She wasn't sure why she was sharing this, only that it felt right. Important. He had this laugh that filled up the whole house. After he was gone, everything felt too quiet. I used to draw him too. Tried to remember exactly how his smile looked. Serafina's head turned. Just slightly. Not looking at Maya, but tilting toward her voice. I wasn't very good at drawing, Maya continued. But it helped anyway. Putting him on paper, like he was still a little bit here, you know? The girl's hand moved, reached for a fresh sheet of paper, pushed it toward Maya, offered a pencil. It was the first gesture she'd made. The first acknowledgement that Maya existed. Maya took the pencil. Her own drawing skills hadn't improved much since childhood, but she sketched anyway. Her father's face, rough and imperfect. His carpenter's hands, the gap between his front teeth that showed when he smiled. Serafina watched. Her dark eyes tracked every line, every shadow. When Maya finished, the girl studied the drawing seriously. Then she picked up her own pencil and added something to her picture of her mother. A second figure. Smaller. A child holding the woman's hand. They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable silence. Serafina drew, and Maya sat beside her, occasionally commenting on the pictures, sometimes just being present. The girl didn't speak, didn't make a sound. But slowly, gradually, she started to relax. Her shoulders dropped, her breathing evened out. When noon came, and Frederick knocked to announce lunch, Serafina looked up at Maya. Really looked, making eye contact for the first time. Her eyes were her father's eyes, deep and dark, and full of things she couldn't say. Then she did something that made Maya's breath catch. She reached out and touched Maya's hand, just briefly. Her fingers were cold, vampire cold, but the gesture was warm. Maya smiled. Tomorrow? The girl nodded, this time with certainty. Lucian was waiting in the hallway when Maya emerged. He'd clearly been pacing, wearing a track in the marble floor. His head snapped up when the door opened. Well, Maya could tell him about the pictures, about the shared grief, about the small hand touching hers. But instead, she simply said, "She's remarkable, Your Majesty. Talented and thoughtful and stronger than she knows." His expression shifted, hope and fear warring across his face. Did she? Does she? She communicated, Maya said carefully. Not with words. But clearly, she shared her drawings with me. She listened. She made eye contact. It's a start. Lucian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were brighter than before. "Thank you," he said roughly. For the first time, Maya saw past the king, saw only a father who loved his daughter desperately and didn't know how to help her. "You're welcome, but Your Majesty, if I may?" He nodded. "Don't expect too much too fast. Healing isn't linear. Some days will be better than others. She might retreat again. Might take weeks or months to make more progress." His jaw tightened. "But she will progress? You think she can come back from this?" Maya thought about her own journey, about the years after her father's death when she'd barely spoken, about how her mother's patience and her brother's need had slowly pulled her back to life. "I think she's been waiting for someone who understands," Maya said. "Someone who knows that silence is its own language, that sometimes you need to sit with the grief before you can move through it." She met his eyes. "You've given her specialists who want to fix her. Maybe she doesn't need fixing. Maybe she just needs witnessing." Lucian stared at her for a long moment. Then, very quietly, he said, "How did you become so wise at 24? "I'm not wise," Maya said. "I'm just familiar with loss. It's not the same thing." But the king was looking at her like she'd handed him something precious, like she'd given him the first real hope he'd felt in 3 years. When she returned to her suite that evening, she found a message from her mother. The mortgage on Ezra's medical bills had been paid. All of it. Every cent they owed. The note simply said, "First month's salary, advanced. Thank you for helping my daughter. It was signed with the king's seal. The days fell into a rhythm. Maya woke each morning in a bed that still felt too luxurious to be real. She'd dress in the simple clothes that had appeared in her closet, courtesy of Frederick's discretion. Then, she'd walk through the quiet palace halls to Serafina's room, where the little girl would be waiting. They didn't follow any curriculum, didn't work from any therapeutic plan. Maya simply showed up, and Serafina decided what they'd do. Some days they drew. Some days they read books together, Maya's voice filling the silence while Serafina followed along, her finger tracing words on the page. Some days they just sat by the window and watched the gardens change as winter deepened. And slowly, in increments so small they might have gone unnoticed, the girl began to open. She started sitting closer to Maya. Then she began initiating contact, touching Maya's arm to get her attention, taking her hand to lead her to a bookshelf. She communicated through gestures, through drawings, through the tilt of her head and the expression in her dark eyes. Not words, not yet, but something. 1 week became 2, 2 became 3. Maya settled into palace life with surprising ease. The other staff members accepted her presence without question. If they wondered why a former waitress now had a suite in the residential wing and spent hours with the princess, they were too well trained to ask. She took lunch in the staff dining room, learning names and stories. Discovered that Frederick had a dry sense of humor hidden beneath his formal exterior. That the head chef had once been human and remembered what it was like. That everyone in the palace moved around the shared, understanding that their king was a good man carrying an impossible weight. And she saw Lucian. Not every day, but often. He'd appear in the hallway outside Serafina's room when Maya's morning session ended, always with the same question in his eyes. How is she? And Maya would tell him. About the book Serafina had chosen, about the picture she'd drawn, about the smile that had flickered across her face when Maya had made a joke. Small things. Precious things, the kind of details that might seem insignificant to anyone else, but meant everything to a father starving for connection with his child. She's in there, Maya told him one afternoon, 3 weeks into her employment. Your daughter. The girl who laughs and loves. And lives. She hasn't disappeared. She's just very quiet right now. Lucian leaned against the wall, suddenly looking less like an immortal king and more like an exhausted parent. Some days I forget what her voice sounds like. The admission was raw, vulnerable. Maya's heart ached for him. Then let me tell you what I hear, she said softly. I hear her in the way she turns pages. Gentle, but eager. I hear her in the sound of her pencil on paper, creating whole worlds without words. I hear her in her laughter. She does laugh, Your Majesty. Silently, but it's there. In the shake of her shoulders, the brightness of her eyes. He looked at her sharply. She laughs? With you? Sometimes. Maya smiled. Usually when I'm being ridiculous. I'm not very good at the silly voices when we read, but I try. Yesterday I attempted to voice a dragon, and I think I sounded more like a sick cat. She thought it was hilarious. Something crossed Lucian's face, an emotion too complex to name. When was the last time you did something silly with her? Maya asked gently. Not as the king, not as the careful father worried about making mistakes, just as a dad who plays with his kid. He was quiet for a long time. Before her mother died, he finally said. We used to play in the gardens. I'd chase her and she'd shriek with delight. We'd tell stories, make up adventures where she was a brave knight and I was the dragon she had to defeat. His voice roughened. I haven't been able to do that since. Every time I try, I see what I've lost. I see her mother in her face, and I. Freeze. Maya finished. I understand. After my dad died, my mom couldn't look at me for weeks. I have his eyes. It hurt her too much. They stood together in the hallway, sharing the particular loneliness of people who loved someone unreachable. Then, Maya said something that surprised even herself. "Join us tomorrow." "What?" "Come to the morning session. Just sit with us. Don't try to teach or fix or heal. Just be present. Let her see you as something other than worried." "I couldn't. I wouldn't know what to." "You don't have to know," Maya interrupted. "You just have to show up." He studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, then." That night, Maya lay awake thinking about the Vampire King who'd forgotten how to play, about the careful distance he maintained from his daughter, not from lack of love, but from too much. From fear that his grief would contaminate hers, from the terrible belief that he'd already failed her. She understood that fear, had felt it every time she looked at Ezra, seeing their father's illness reflected in her brother's struggles. The weight of being the strong one, the one who had to hold everything together. The next morning, when Maya arrived at Serafina's room, Lucian was already there. He sat stiffly in a chair near the window, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Serafina stood frozen by her desk, her eyes wide, flicking between her father and Maya. The air felt fragile. Maya crossed to the bookshelf, deliberately casual. "I was thinking we could read the one about the garden fairies today, the one with the beautiful illustrations. What do you think, Serafina?" The girl didn't move. Her small hands twisted in the fabric of her dress. Maya pulled the book from the shelf and settled onto the floor, leaning against the wall. It was her usual reading spot, more comfortable than the chairs. After a moment, Serafina came and sat beside her, not touching, but close, very deliberately not looking at her father. Maya opened the book, started reading. Her voice filled the room, steady and warm. She did the voices, even the silly ones, gave the flower fairy a high, tinkling laugh, made the grumpy beetle sound like Frederick when he was being particularly formal. And slowly, Serafina relaxed, leaned into Maya's side, pointed to illustrations she particularly liked. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Lucian sat motionless, barely breathing, watching his daughter exist in a moment of peace. When Maya glanced up, she saw his hands gripping the chair arms, saw the intensity of his focus, the desperate way he memorized every detail. The way Serafina's hair fell across her face, the small smile playing at her lips, the contentment in her posture. He was starving for this, for any glimpse of his daughter being okay. Maya finished the chapter and closed the book. Serafina immediately jumped up and ran to her desk, pulled out her drawing supplies, started sketching something with fierce concentration. "Your Majesty," Maya said quietly, "would you like to see what she's been working on?" Lucian rose, moved to the desk with careful steps, like approaching a wild creature that might bolt. Serafina tensed when he got close, but she didn't move away. "She's been creating an entire world," Maya explained, standing beside him. "See? This is the map of the fairy kingdom, and these are character studies. She's named each fairy after flowers from the garden. This one is Moonflower. She's the brave one." Lucian stared at the drawings. They were remarkably detailed for an 8-year-old, showed real talent, real imagination. "You did all of this?" he asked his daughter, his voice rough. Serafina nodded, still not looking at him. But she pushed another drawing forward. This one showed a fairy that looked different from the others. Taller, wearing a crown made of thorns. Maya studied it. "Who's this?" The girl's hand moved, pointed to the fairy, then pointed to her father. Lucian went very still. "Me?" Another nod. "And what? What does this fairy do?" Serafina picked up her pencil, added to the drawing. She gave the fairy a sword, a shield. Drew smaller fairies gathered behind him, safe in his shadow. He protects them, Maya said softly. He keeps everyone safe. Serafina looked up at her father then, really looked, and very slowly, she nodded. The king's hand shook as he touched the edge of the paper. "Thank you," he whispered, "for showing me. It was the beginning of something. Fragile, uncertain, but real." Winter deepened over the palace. The gardens frosted silver each night, and the moon hung heavy and full in the sky. Inside Serafina's room, the morning sessions expanded. Lucian joined them every day now, sitting quietly at first, then gradually participating. Maya taught him how to simply be present without pushing, how to follow Serafina's lead instead of directing, how to play. It was harder for him than Maya expected. 2 centuries of ruling left little room for silliness. He'd forgotten how to be spontaneous, how to laugh without calculation. But he tried. For his daughter, he tried. One morning, Serafina pulled out a box of building blocks. She'd ignored them for years, according to Lucian, but something about having both him and Maya there made her brave enough to attempt construction. They built a castle together. Serafina directing through gestures and pointed looks. Maya providing commentary. Lucian following instructions with the same focus he probably used for military strategy. When the tallest tower collapsed, Maya expected Serafina to be upset. Instead, the girl's shoulders shook with silent laughter. She looked at her father, eyes dancing, and deliberately knocked over another tower. Lucian stared. Then, very slowly, he smiled. Really smiled. The expression transformed his face, years falling away. "Oh," he said, "this is how we're playing?" He knocked over a wall. Serafina clapped her hands silently, delighted. Rebuilt it. Knocked it down again. They spent an hour in controlled destruction and reconstruction, learning the joy of things that could be broken and remade, learning that perfection mattered less than participation. Maya watched them, her heart full, watched the invisible walls between father and daughter crumble like those block towers, watched them remember how to exist together without the weight of grief standing between them. "You're good at this," Lucian said later, after Serafina had gone for lunch. "At what?" "At seeing what people need, at knowing how to reach them." He studied her face. "How did you learn it?" Maya thought about her answer. "I had a really good example. My mom. After Dad died, she was drowning in grief, but she never let Ezra and me drown with her. She learned to swim so she could teach us." She paused. "And I had Ezra. He needed me. Needing purpose is sometimes the only thing that keeps you going." "I understand that," Lucian said quietly. "After my wife died, Serafina was the only reason I kept functioning. But I think You focused on survival instead of living," Maya finished. "It's not wrong. Sometimes that's all you can do. But maybe now you're ready for more." His dark eyes held hers. "Are you always this perceptive?" "No." Maya smiled slightly. "Sometimes I'm completely oblivious. Ask anyone who's ever tried to flirt with me. It goes right over my head." The comment was meant to be light. But something shifted in Lucian's expression, something that made her breath catch. "I find that hard to believe," he said softly. The moment stretched. Electric. Dangerous. Maya stepped back. She was the king's employee, here to help his daughter. Nothing more. "Your Majesty, I should." "Lucian," he interrupted, "when we're alone." "Call me Lucian." She shouldn't. Knew she shouldn't. But the word slipped out. Anyway. "Lucian." He closed his eyes briefly, like her voice saying his name affected him physically. When he looked at her again, there was something raw in his expression, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Thank you," he said, "for everything you've given us. You've brought my daughter back to life. You've reminded me what it means to hope, Maya's throat was tight. I'm just doing my job. This stopped being just a job weeks ago. His hand rose, hesitated, then very gently touched her cheek. For both of us. Before she could respond, before she could process what was happening, Frederick's voice crackled through the intercom. Your Majesty, there's a situation that requires your immediate attention. Lucian dropped his hand, stepped back. The king's mask slid into place, hiding the vulnerable man underneath. I need to go, he said, his voice formal again. But Maya. We'll talk about this. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Watched him leave. Then stood there, her cheek still warm where he'd touched it, her heart racing. This was dangerous. He was the Vampire King, immortal, powerful, infinitely above her, and she was human, temporary, here for his daughter, not for him. But the way he'd looked at her, like she was something precious, something necessary. Maya pressed her hands to her face, trying to calm her breathing. She couldn't afford this, couldn't afford to feel anything beyond professional care for this family. Her job was to help Serafina, to give the girl tools to heal, to be present and supportive and steady. Not to fall for the girl's father, not to imagine what those careful hands might feel like, not to wonder what it would be like to be seen by someone like him, not as a project or a problem to solve, but as a woman, as someone worthy of wanting. She needed to refocus, needed to remember why she was here. The door opened. Serafina slipped back in, carrying a plate of cookies from lunch. She looked at Maya, tilted her head in question. I'm fine, Maya said, forcing brightness into her voice. Just thinking. The girl set down the cookies and took Maya's hand, led her to the window seat. They sat together, watching snow begin to fall outside, white and silent and gentle. Serafina leaned against Maya's shoulder, small and trusting, and Maya wrapped her arm around the girl, holding her close, reminding herself what mattered. This child, this healing, this second chance at family for a little girl who'd lost too much. Not the way her own heart was starting to ache for things it couldn't have, but that night, alone in her suite, Maya let herself think about Lucian's touch, about the softness in his voice, about the possibility of something more. Just for a moment, just long enough to ache. Then, she pushed it away and focused on tomorrow, on being exactly what Serafina needed her to be. Nothing more. Nothing less. The phone call came 2 weeks later, shattering Maya's carefully maintained equilibrium. She was reading in her suite when her mother's number flashed across the screen. The time showed 11 at night, too late for casual conversation. Maya, her mother's voice broke immediately. It's Ezra. He's in the hospital. They think, the doctors say, you need to come home. Everything stopped. The book slid from Maya's hands. When? Tonight. I'm so sorry, baby. I know your job, but he's asking for you, and I don't know if. Her mother couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I'm coming, Maya said. I'll be there as fast as I can. She threw clothes into her old duffel bag. Her hands shook so badly she could barely zip it. Ezra, her baby brother, the reason she'd survived their father's death, the person who needed her most. She had to call Lucian, had to tell him she was leaving. Had to. The door to her suite opened without her touching it. Lucian stood there, still dressed despite the late hour. Frederick had mentioned hearing a disturbance. His eyes found her bag, found her face. What's happened? My brother. Maya's voice cracked. He's in the hospital. I need to go home. I'm sorry, I know this is sudden, but I have to. I'll come back as soon as I can, or if you need to replace me, I understand. But right now, I just... She was spiraling, panicking. Lucian crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands gripped her shoulders, firm and grounding. Stop. Breathe. You're not being replaced. You're going to your brother. We'll manage here. But. No buts. He released her shoulders, pulled out his phone. My private car will take you. It's faster than commercial transport. Frederick will arrange everything. Maya stared at him. Your Majesty, I can't. You can. His voice left no room for argument. And when you get there, you'll use this. He handed her a card. Black, embossed with his personal seal. Any medical expenses. Anything your family needs. This covers it. The tears came then. She couldn't stop them. I can't accept this. It's too much. Lucian's hand cupped her cheek, the same gentle touch as before. His thumb brushed away her tears. Maya, you gave me my daughter back. Let me help your brother. Please. She nodded, unable to speak. He pulled her into an embrace. She stiffened in surprise, then melted against him. He was solid and cool and steady, and she desperately needed something to hold on to. You'll call when you arrive? He murmured into her hair. Yes. And you'll let me know what the doctors say? Yes. And you'll come back? The question held weight, meaning beyond the words. She pulled back enough to look at his face, saw the fear there. Not just worry about Serafina losing her, something else, something personal. I'll come back, she promised. Lucian, I'll come back. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Go. Save your brother. We'll be here when you return. The drive to the hospital took 3 hours. Maya spent them staring out the window, praying to gods she wasn't sure she believed in. The card Lucian had given her burned in her pocket like a promise, like hope she didn't deserve. Ezra looked so small in the hospital bed. 15 years old, but illness had stolen his size, leaving him thin and pale, hooked up to machines that beeped rhythms she'd learned to hate. He smiled when she entered. Weak, but genuine. You came. Always, Maya said, taking his hand. His fingers were cold. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. He tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough that made Maya's chest tighten. The doctors say it's bad this time. He whispered when he could breathe again. Something about complications. They're talking about another surgery. She squeezed his hand. Then we'll do another surgery. You've beaten this before. You'll beat it again. I'm tired, May. His nickname for her. The one their father used to use. I'm so tired of fighting. Don't. Maya's voice broke. Don't say that. Don't you dare give up on me. He looked at her with eyes too old for his face. You gave up everything for me. Your education, your life, your dreams. You work yourself to death to pay my medical bills. Maybe it's time to let go. She wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness, to demand the universe explain why good people suffered. But instead, she climbed into the narrow hospital bed beside him, careful of the tubes and wires. She held her little brother the way she'd held him when he was small, when Dad died, and he'd had nightmares, when the first surgery had terrified him. Listen to me, she said fiercely. You are not a burden. You are not something to let go of. You are my brother, and I love you, and as long as you want to fight, I will fight beside you. Understood? Ezra was quiet for a long time. Then, but what about you? What about your life? I have a life, Maya said. I have a job I love. I have a little girl who needs me. I have. She stopped, almost said too much. You have what? Ezra turned his head to look at her. Hope, Maya finished quietly. For the first time in a long time, I have hope. Tell me about it, he said. Tell me about this job. This little girl. So she did. Told him about Serafina's silence and her slowly returning joy. About the drawings and the building blocks and the silent laughter. Told him about the palace and the gardens and the strange beauty of Vampire Court. And she told him about Lucian. Not everything. Not the touches or the moments that made her heart race. But enough. Enough that Ezra, even sick and exhausted, smiled knowingly. "You like him. It's not like that," Maya protested. "May." Her brother squeezed her hand. "I can hear it in your voice. You like him, and he clearly cares about you." She thought about the private car, the medical card, the way Lucian had held her. "Maybe," she admitted. "But it doesn't matter. He's a king. I'm just. If you say just a waitress, I'll kick you out of this bed." Ezra's voice was stern, despite his weakness. "You're brilliant and kind and strong. Anyone would be lucky to have you, including a vampire king." The tears came again. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." He yawned, the medication pulling him toward sleep. "Promise me something?" "Anything. When I get better, and I will get better, you'll let yourself be happy. You'll stop sacrificing everything for everyone else and take something for yourself. For once." Maya kissed his forehead. "I promise." She stayed at the hospital for 3 days, lived on bad coffee and worse cafeteria food, held her mother when she broke down, advocated with doctors, made decisions about treatments and surgeries, used Lucian's card without shame because her brother's life mattered more than pride. And every night, she called Lucian, updated him on Ezra's condition, listened to him tell her about Serafina, about how the girl kept going to the window during their morning sessions, looking for Maya, about how she'd drawn a picture of the 3 of them together. He asked for nothing, demanded no timeline for her return, simply listened and offered support, and reminded her that she had a place to come back to when she was ready. On the 4th day, Ezra's surgery was successful. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. He'd need time to recover, weeks of careful monitoring, but the immediate crisis had passed. "I need to go back to work," Maya told her mother. "But I'll send money. I'll visit as often as I can." Her mother stopped her. "Baby, go. Go back to your life. Your brother is stable. We have excellent care thanks to." She gestured at the private hospital room, the specialist doctors, all covered by the king's card. "Thanks to your king, we'll be fine." She smiled. "And maybe when you come visit next time, you'll have more to tell me about this employer of yours." Maya blushed. "Mom, I'm your mother. I know when you're leaving things out." She hugged Maya tightly. "Be happy, sweetheart. You deserve it." The drive back to the palace felt longer than the drive away. Maya watched the landscape change from city to countryside to the elegant estates that marked vampire territory. Her heart raced faster with every mile. She was going back. Back to Serafina. Back to a job she loved. Back to Lucian. When the car finally pulled through the palace gates, it was late afternoon. The winter sun hung low and pale, casting everything in silver light. Frederick met her at the entrance. "Miss Thorne, welcome back." His formal greeting couldn't hide the warmth in his eyes. "How is your brother? Recovering?" Maya smiled. "Thanks to His Majesty's generosity. The king asked to be notified immediately upon your return. He's in the East Garden, with Princess Serafina." Maya's breath caught. "Go," Frederick said gently. "They've been waiting." The East Garden looked exactly as it had the first morning Maya met Lucian there. Moonflowers climbed silver trellises. White roses gathered in clusters. The fountain whispered its eternal song, and beside the fountain Lucian sat on the bench. Serafina was curled against his side, a book open across both their laps. He was reading to her, his deep voice carrying across the garden, doing the silly voices Maya had taught him, making his daughter smile. Maya stopped at the garden entrance, not wanting to interrupt, wanting to memorize this moment. Father and daughter, together, connected, healing. Serafina saw her first. The girl's head snapped up, her dark eyes going wide. Then she was moving, launching herself off the bench, running across the garden with her arms outstretched. Maya barely had time to drop her bag before Serafina crashed into her, hugging her with fierce intensity. The girl's body shook. She was crying, silent sobs that made her shoulders heave. "I missed you too," Maya whispered, holding her tight. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm here now. I'm here." Over Serafina's head, Maya's eyes met Lucien's. He'd stood when his daughter ran. Now he approached slowly, giving them space. But his expression, the relief and joy and something deeper, something that made Maya's heart stutter. "You came back," he said quietly. "I promised I would." Serafina pulled back enough to look at Maya's face. Her small hands moved to Maya's cheeks, touching gently, checking that she was real. Then the girl did something she'd never done before. Her mouth opened, shaped words that made no sound but Maya could read on her lips. "Don't leave again." Maya's vision blurred. "I won't," she promised. "Not if you don't want me to." Serafina shook her head frantically, hugged Maya again. Lucien moved closer. His hand touched Maya's shoulder, warm and grounding. "She's been lost without you," he said. His voice dropped lower. "We both have." Maya looked up at him, at the vampire king who'd given her everything, who'd saved her brother, who'd held her when she broke, who looked at her like she was necessary. "I need to tell you something," she said. Serafina, sensing the shift in tone, pulled back. She took her father's hand and Maya's hand, linking them together. Then she looked between them with eyes far too knowing for 8 years old. Whatever Maya had been about to say died in her throat. The girl was watching them with hope, with expectation, with the understanding that sometimes families formed in unexpected ways. "Maybe we should talk," Lucien said. His fingers tightened around Maya's, somewhere private. Serafina made a shooing gesture, pointed to the palace, pointed to herself, then pointed to both of them and made a different gesture. One that clearly meant you two need to figure this out. "She's been practicing being bossy," Lucien said, his lips twitching. "I think she learned it from someone." Maya laughed despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. "I have no idea who you mean." Serafina rolled her eyes, an 8-year-old's perfect scorn for oblivious adults. Then she squeezed both their hands and walked back toward the palace, deliberately leaving them alone. The garden felt very quiet without her. Lucien still held Maya's hand. "Maya, But she cut him off. "I need to say this first, while I have the courage." He nodded, waiting. "I'm falling for you," she said. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "I know I shouldn't. I know this is complicated and probably impossible, and I'm just your employee, and you're a king and immortal, and I'm human and temporary, and—" He kissed her, pulled her close with his free hand, the other still tangled with hers, kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was necessary, like she was everything. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "You talk too much," he said roughly. Maya's laugh was shaky. "That's what people keep telling me. I've wanted to do that for weeks." His forehead rested against hers. "Wanted to tell you that you're not just my employee, that you've become essential, that when you left it felt like losing light." His thumb brushed her cheek. "You came into our lives like a storm, unexpected, transformative, and I am completely, irrevocably in love with you." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. "Lucien, I know all the objections," he continued. "I'm immortal. You're human. I'm a king. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life, someone who can grow old with you." "Someone who?" "I don't want normal," Maya interrupted. "I don't want someone else. I want you." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were bright. "I can't promise you forever. Humans and vampires, we don't." "I know." She touched his face. "I know what I'm choosing. I know the complications. But Lucien, I've spent my whole life playing it safe." Being responsible, sacrificing what I wanted for what I should do. For once, just once, I want to choose something for myself. I want to choose you. The kiss this time was softer, sweeter, a promise instead of desperation. When they finally broke apart, Lucian kept her close, his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. "We'll figure it out," he murmured. "The politics, the complications, the future. We'll find a way. Together." Maya nodded against his chest. Together. A throat cleared delicately behind them. They turned to find Frederick standing at the garden entrance, his expression carefully neutral. "Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but Princess Serafina wanted me to inform you both that dinner will be served in the private dining room in 1 hour. She suggests you both attend." Looking presentable. She was quite insistent on that last part. Lucian smiled. Was she? Frederick's lips twitched. She also wanted me to convey that she approves. Her exact signs were, and I quote, "finally." They were being ridiculous. Maya laughed. "That sounds like her." "Tell her we'll be there," Lucian said. "And Frederick?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Have the household start preparing the guest suite next to Maya's. Make it suitable for extended visits. We'll need proper accommodations for Miss Thorne's family when they come to stay." Frederick's smile was genuine. "Of course, Your Majesty. I'll see to it personally." When he left, Maya looked up at Lucian. "You don't have to do that." "My family are now part of our family," Lucian finished. "Your brother will need continued medical care. Your mother deserves support. And Serafina deserves to meet the people who made you who you are." He paused. "Besides, I think Ezra and I should meet. I need to assure him my intentions toward his sister are honorable." Maya's eyes filled again. "How are you real? I ask myself the same thing about you every day." He kissed her forehead. "Now come. Let's not keep our daughter waiting." Our daughter. The words settled around Maya's heart like a blessing. She took Lucian's hand, and together they walked back toward the palace, toward a future neither of them had planned, toward complications they'd face together, toward a family built from broken pieces and unexpected grace. Behind them, the first stars began to appear. The garden fountain sang its endless song, and in the palace windows, a small girl watched them approach, her face bright with joy. For the first time in 3 years, Princess Serafina smiled without sadness, without silence hanging heavy around her. Just smiled, because her family was finally completely whole. 6 months changed everything. Spring arrived with a violence of color. The palace gardens exploded into bloom. Cherry blossoms drifted like pink snow. Life returned with insistent joy. Maya stood in those gardens now, watching Ezra chase Serafina through the flower beds. Her brother had recovered, gained weight and color, and the particular energy of a 15-year-old given a second chance at living. He'd been staying at the palace for 3 months, getting stronger, getting healthy. Her mother visited weekly, had stopped looking haunted, had started looking happy. And Serafina. The girl ran ahead of Ezra, her laughter ringing clear and bright across the garden. Actual sound, actual voice. She'd started speaking 2 months ago. Tentatively at first. Single words. Then, sentences. Then entire paragraphs delivered with the enthusiasm of someone making up for years of silence. Now she narrated everything, her voice high and sweet and impossible to silence. "Look." Serafina shouted, pointing at a butterfly. "It's the same color as my dress." Ezra grinned. "I think it's following you. Maybe you're secretly a fairy princess." "I am a princess," Serafina said with perfect 8-year-old logic, "but probably not a fairy one. Fairies don't like iron, and I have iron in my blood." "Papa told me." Maya's not getting used to hearing her talk. Lucian said, coming up behind Maya, his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. She leaned back into him, comfortable, familiar. It still feels like a miracle, every time. He hummed in agreement. They watched the children play. Watched Serafina grab Ezra's hand and pull him toward the fountain, talking rapidly about the fish that lived there, about how she'd named each one, about the complicated social hierarchy of the fish kingdom she'd invented. I received a letter from the council today, Lucian said quietly. About? Us. His arms tightened slightly. They want to discuss our relationship formally. Address the political implications of a human in the royal household. Maya's stomach dropped. And I told them we'd be happy to discuss it. His voice held amusement. Right after we returned from our honeymoon. She spun in his arms. What? He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring. Simple. Elegant. A silver band with a single stone the color of midnight. Marry me, he said. Simply. Directly. Make this official. Make us a family in every way possible. Maya stared at the ring, at his face, at the absolute certainty in his eyes. The complications. The politics. I'll handle them. He touched her cheek. I've ruled for 2 centuries. I think I can manage a council of bureaucrats. The human vampire thing makes you unique, not unsuitable. The fact that I'm mortal makes every moment precious. His thumb brushed her lip. Maya, I've lived a very long time. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've experienced more than most beings ever will, and nothing has ever felt as significant as loving you. Tears streaked down her face. You're sure? He smiled. I'm sure. Marry me. Make Serafina officially your daughter. Make Ezra officially my brother. Make this strange, unexpected family permanent. Yes, Maya whispered. Then, louder. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, kissed her with the kind of tenderness that still made her heart stutter. Behind them, Serafina shrieked. I knew it. I knew it. Told you, Papa. Told you she'd say yes. They broke apart to find both children watching. Ezra was grinning. Serafina was literally bouncing with excitement. How long have you two been standing there? Maya asked. Long enough, Ezra said. He looked at Lucian. You know I'm supposed to do the threatening older brother thing, right? Where I tell you that if you hurt my sister, I'll make you regret it. Lucian nodded seriously. I would expect nothing less. Ezra studied the Vampire King for a moment, then shrugged. But honestly, you've kind of already proven yourself. The whole saving my life thing. Letting us live here. Making May happy. So instead I'll just say thanks. For taking care of her. For letting her take care of you. Both. He offered his hand. Lucian shook it. Brothers. Then. Brothers. Serafina launched herself at Maya, hugging her waist. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress? Can I help plan everything? Can we have cake? Can we have flowers? Can we? Breathe. Maya laughed, running her fingers through the girl's hair. Yes to all of it. We'll plan together. The girl looked up, her face incandescent. I'm getting a mother. An official mother. You've always had a mother, Lucian said gently. We're just making it formal. Serafina nodded. But now everyone will know. She looked at Maya. Now everyone will know you're mine. She paused. And Papa's. And Ezra's. We're all each other's. That's right, Maya said softly. We're family. That night, after the children were in bed, after the excitement had settled into quiet contentment, Maya and Lucian sat on the balcony outside her suite. Their suite now. She'd moved her things into his rooms a month ago, and every morning she still woke up surprised by the luxury, by the happiness, by the impossibility of it all. You know the council will actually make this difficult, she said. Probably. Lucian's fingers traced patterns on her hand. Bureaucrats hate change. They'll worry about precedent, about what it means for a human to be vampire royalty. Let them worry. His voice was calm. I've made my choice. The kingdom will adjust. Maya looked at her ring, at the stone that caught starlight. A year ago, I was sleeping in my car, trying to figure out how to survive another day. And now you're here." He pulled her closer, about to marry a vampire king, about to officially adopt a princess, about to become royalty yourself. "It's absurd when you think about it." "Completely absurd," she agreed. She tilted her head back to look at him. "Do you ever regret it? Offering me that first sweet? Getting involved?" "Never." His answer was immediate. "You?" Maya thought about it. About the complications and the politics and the impossibility of their situation. About the fact that she'd never age while he stayed forever young. About the challenges still ahead. Then she thought about Serafina's laughter. About Ezra getting healthy. About her mother's smile. About Lucian's arms around her. About love that had found her in the darkest moment and pulled her into light. "No," she said. "Never." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear over the gardens. Somewhere in the palace, Serafina dreamed of weddings and fancy dresses. Somewhere in the guest wing, Ezra slept peacefully, his body finally healing. Somewhere in the city beyond, Maya's mother lived without fear for the first time in years. And here, on this balcony, two people who'd found each other against all probability held each other and believed in impossible things. In human and vampire love, in families built from strangers. In second chances and new beginnings. In the possibility that sometimes, when you thought you'd lost everything, you were actually about to find something even better. The wedding was set for summer. The council could complain all they wanted. The kingdom would adapt. And Maya, who'd once had $43 and a broken-down car, would become a vampire queen. Not because of power or politics or strategy, but because a lonely king had overheard her phone call, had seen her at her lowest moment, had recognized something in her struggle that matched his own, had offered her shelter, then offered her family, then offered her everything. At 3 a.m. on a cold November night, Lucian had made a decision that changed both their worlds. He'd sent Frederick to find her, had given her warmth and safety and hope, and in return, she'd given him his daughter back, had given him laughter and love and light, had shown him that healing was possible, that silence could end, that families could be rebuilt from broken pieces. It was, Maya thought, a fair exchange. More than fair. Shocking, the title had promised. What he did at 3 a.m. was shocking. But the truly shocking part wasn't the rescue, wasn't the money or the suite or the job. It was this. The impossible love. The unexpected family. The way tragedy transformed into joy. The way two wounded people had found each other and decided to heal together. That was the shocking part. And it was perfect.